Hey, what is up, mortals? It is Sam Gabriel here, and welcome to What If Deku Could Manipulate Gravity, Part 8. Just wanted to greet you guys by just saying sit back and relax, you're in for a treat, so we begin. Sunlight pleasantly seeped through the glass walls of a simple but charming building at the center of Tokyo. The white building was comfortable on the eyes as it stood above the busy street. Light-hearted chatter filled the area around the building both inside and out. Everything was just peaceful. Frankly, I like you a lot. Dressed in denim blue fabric from head to toe, the tall man turned around to face his intern with a welcoming stance. First impressions mattered to the pro, and the child before him had definitely pulled it off. With a gentle smile and word of thanks, Izuku bowed his greetings to both Best Jeanist and the other sidekicks that were in the room. It was a simple gesture, but a necessary one, as actions like this make someone seem approachable. The kid was immediately accustomed to the atmosphere, and no further introductions were needed. The greenette was fixed to a schedule, and just like that, internships had begun. Are you sure you want to keep trying? Izuku was sitting in a chair with Best Jeanist hovering around him. The pro held multiple combs as well as hairspray toward the mass of green and black curls. I don't understand why even my strongest hairspray is not working. The fiber hero had already compromised for Izuku to not wear a pair of jeans, since the greenette overheated without the padding around his body. It was specifically made to reduce his temperature, after all, and he would be weakened if he wore the trademark clothing item instead. This brings us to the current situation, where the hero was attempting to brush the wild locks into a more sophisticated style, except the unruly hair refused to stay down. There were always a few curls that stubbornly stood up. This will do. Getting up, Izuku turned to the mirror to see that his mass of hair had been somewhat tamed, kind of. It looked odd, with only half being swept neatly to the side, but the pro had simply been unable to control it anymore. In this new appearance, the child's next duties were given out. The first day of the greenette's internship consisted of indoor activities. These ranged from simple tasks such as helping to file away cases to more duties like receiving a phone call for help. The intern was then able to experience the fiber hero skillfully choosing the correct people for the job and send them out in style. The day had been a busy one, filled with valuable experience of what a pro's average day in the office would be. How did you find today? With the last paper from Izuku's pile successfully returned to the correct folder, Best Jeanist wanted the child's opinion on how his first day went. Except the pro caught the greenette's face in a stoic expression as the intern stared at the open cabinet. Midoriya? Oh, sorry about that. I finished the pile. Izuku sheepishly laughed as he closed the drawer and turned to the hero. Think nothing of it. I was just interested in how you thought of today's experience. Best Jeanist swiftly changed the topic back to its point, and the greenette lit up. It was amazing. I knew heroes had to write reviews on everything they do, and I thought it was so interesting. There's so much information. Time, heroes involved, damage caused if there was any, and so much more. I think my favorite part was the calls since you acted immediately and knew who to call for. How'd you do that? The sudden ramble of the day's analysis came to a sudden stop as the intern faced the hero with questions in his eyes. The fiber hero smiled from underneath the fabric hiding his mouth and replied, Experience. The more you do, the more accustomed you get to acting immediately with the best course of action. However, a good pro hero would take his time to get to know the people he works with. He signaled around the office and waved as a few pros walked in to start the night shift. They smiled back and continued with their day to keep the pace. For my agency, I get sidekicks to all wear jeans. It shows that we are together and a team. Of course, that may not work for everyone, such as yourself, so I try to fix their hair instead. The pro eyed Izuku's mop of green curls, and the child couldn't help but chuckle. It was obvious that the pro had given himself a new goal. He wanted to tame the mass, even if it was the last thing he did. Getting to know someone will help you determine their capabilities better than whatever is written on paper. I'm sure you're aware, considering you clearly got along with the one who placed first at the sports festival. The greenette nodded. From a different perspective, Bakugo was a rash, prideful boy with too much power for his own good. In many ways, the statement was true, but after knowing the blonde for a certain amount of time, the boy was obviously more than that. His best friend was insightful, motivating, and secretly candid in his own way, even if it was a little overbearing at times. He was someone who had always been there for Izuku, both emotionally when the greenette hit a block, and physically when the child fainted. They had always run for the future together. Midoriya? Oh, sorry, I was just thinking about how amazing Kacchan was. The hero smiled knowingly before dismissing the kid for the day. You've worked hard. Get some good rest and get ready for tomorrow. Yes, sir. Best Jeanist was true to his word, as the second he managed to tame a little more of the child's hair, Izuku went to work. The kid went and started on the pile of completed cases, as well as picking up the phone whenever the one next to him rang. Since he had been accustomed to the pace the day before, he managed to finish his pile by mid-afternoon. The pro hero who had finished his stack within the morning nodded with an impressed expression as the greenette picked up another call. "It's another lost dog!" Instead of calling one of the available pros, Best Jeanist walked over to the boy's desk. "You and I will be taking this one. Come, the fabric of time will not wait for anyone." Izuku immediately got up, and the two headed out to the location. A small, teary-eyed girl handed them a photo, and just like that, the search began. "Your quirk is very convenient for travel," the pro commented as the two heroes jumped from roof to roof with their gravity decreased. From up high, it would be easier to see if there was an animal loose below. Izuku smiled at the praise, as he had discovered going airborne was his preferred way of movement. "Is that him?" His Viridian eyes had spotted a small puppy wandering by some benches near the local park, and the pro hero nodded as they descended. Within seconds, a fibrous strand shot out and made a temporary leash from the dog's collar to Best Jeanist's hand. Just like that, the lost pet was returned.
"Hey, I've seen that guy on TV before!"
The hero in training blinked before he turned around, his smile widening at the sight of the three young children who pointed at him.
"Yeah, his team were flying, and it was like the superest thing ever!"
Izuku thanked the kids for their support, as the one who spoke held out his hands for a handshake. The greenette happily shook them and grinned as he saw the boy gasp, feeling his body become lighter. An enthusiastic chatter immediately broke out as the boy spun a little before returning to the ground. His eyes were almost sparkling with excitement as he waved the heroes goodbye, and the three children went their way. "You handled kids well, something some heroes struggle with." The greenette's gentle smile for the kids became wider as he nodded, and the hero asked another question. "Do you have any younger siblings, by chance?" They continued down the busy street as Izuku shook his head, explaining how he was an only child. "Although sometimes I did feel like I was an older brother to Kacchan, since he would start trouble with the older years." "Oh, Bakugo, right? Frankly, I'm not terribly fond of him." The greenette laughed and told the pro that many who didn't know the blonde thought that too. With a word of assurance to the man that Bakugo was a nice person deep down, they continued the merry chatter. "So you were like the older brother to him?" Izuku nodded as he said, "Only when he started to pointlessly flaunt his power. He actually won a fight against two boys who were in a higher grade. I just cheered for most of the fights and ended up stopping him before he could hurt his chances of being a hero." The greenette was chuckling as he started to blabber about his childhood. The busy street noise didn't seem to affect him at all as they walked under the pleasant sunlight. "I might be responsible, but I'm pretty sure I felt like the younger sibling. I mean, I know I am younger, but still. Whenever Kacchan did anything, I would take an interest too, try and be better than him. Then start another pointless argument." Izuku had been a polite child the whole internship, yet right now, Best Jeanist felt like he was watching the happy child from the sports festival. It had felt odd how the boy had been so reserved. Although it was easy to have a child to listen and not make a fuss, the hero believed Izuku should do things the way he wanted, to an extent as well. The denim-dressed hero had wanted to see if the freckled boy would complain if he was given the task of a normal sidekick instead of the easier version for interns. But it proved useless, as Izuku was an exceedingly bright child. He adapted to the office pace within minutes, and it even improved further. It was to the point that his flexible mind caused many stares from the other pros. Like Bakugo, he was a prodigy in his own right. "And when Kacchan fell off the bridge, I jumped right in after him." The mumble helped Jeanist understand Izuku a little better, and when the day came to an end, the hero asked the same question. "How did you find today?" The greenette shook the past between him and Bakugo out of his mind and replied his thoughts eagerly. The answer mostly consisted of the sense of accomplishment he perceived from helping the girl, as well as the joy he felt from receiving praise. "It's a bit weird saying that out loud. Kacchan and I receive praise all the time. I guess it's been a while since it's just been me specifically." The hero nodded in understanding, as one of the pros from across the room told Izuku he was great. The boy thanked the pro before finishing for the day. That night, a vigilante walked into a bar through Kurogiri's portal. The man was met by the leader with whom he had a truce with. But Shigaraki wasn't alone. Next to the hand villain stood three rather peculiar people. "New recruits?" Shigaraki shook his head as he gestured to the three to come over. One immediately ran to the vigilante with her fangs on full display. "Oh my god, it's Mr. Staney! I love you so much! I want to be you, Mr. Staney! Can I have some of your blood?" She held out her knife, but the vigilante brushed her off and glared at the League's leader. "What's the meaning of this?" Shigaraki didn't look at him as he faced the TV screen in the room.
They came for you. They considered my base a connection to you, since you have been coming and going. Master said that from the truce, I could do them the favor of showing them to you.
You know I work solo. The hero killer was glaring daggers, and the hand villain shrugged.
What you do now is up to you. Turn them down, take them in. I agreed only to have you meet them.
The three newcomers, Toga, Dabi, and Spinner, tried convincing their idol that they would help his cause. The vigilante kept silent as they spoke, and truthfully, they were strong people. The only problem was that he still did work solo. Then you take them. I don't know your goals, but we both agreed to take down society the way it is today. I have no need for followers. Shigaraki nodded, pleased that his master's plan had come true. Recruiting Stain had brought some interesting people out of the shadows, and they, too, were strong. The three didn't mind at all either, considering their idol was the one to recruit them into the league. The hand villain ordered Kurojiri to open a portal, as Stain wanted to return to a certain location in Hosu. Keeping his other schemes in his back pocket, Shigaraki spent the rest of the night explaining his plan of attack that he wanted in just over 3 months' time. The third day went almost the same way for Izuku as the day before, except he had finished his paperwork by lunch this time. This meant they had more time to patrol, and unlike the day before, the Greenette participated in slightly harder tasks. The only thing that stood out was the news that night. How many victims does that make now? Best Jeanist looked at the worrying numbers with a grim expression. The news was abuzz with the latest hero death, and it was of a pro called Native. That death meant the hero killer had a body count of 18 now, as well as a record of crippling 23 others into early retirement. The news was not pleasant. The next few days went on like the ones before, and by the 6th day of internship, Izuku was finishing his papers as quickly as a well-seasoned pro. His patrols were as fulfilling as ever, but Best Jeanist did notice how the boy would sometimes stare off into space. Everyone else had assumed the boy was a little airheaded, but the boy knew better. He had seen how chatty the boy could be, and it seemed only to occur on one topic. On the way back from patrolling, the hero and intern reached a quiet path. There was almost no one there, as it was basically night already. Midoriya. It happened again. If Izuku wasn't occupied with work, the boy was lost in his thoughts. Did something happen between you and Bakugo? Hearing the blonde's name snapped the child into reality as he registered the words. What makes you say that? Izuku's voice was a little timid as he spoke, and his eyes widened when he heard himself. They stood in silence as the student didn't know what to say. He was shocked to hear his vocals so vulnerable, and it made his body freeze up. Izuku didn't know if the feeling was just the cold or fright, but either way it caused his breath to quicken in mild panic. The pro saw the change and immediately reacted, going down so he was at eye level with his intern. You don't have to talk, but I'll say this. It is better to be honest and get help from someone you know early than to figure it out alone later. The Greenette nodded, his nerves on high alert even though he was trying to relax. It was as if he had to face a pit in his stomach that he didn't know he had. Well, His voice was still vulnerable, and Izuku didn't know what he was feeling. It was frustrating and made the usually rational boy want to lash out and scream. Something inside him was pulling him down, and the student didn't know what to do. Take your time. No one can see or hear us from here. Take all the time you need. Jeanist was still at eye level, and Izuku nodded again, this time not letting go of eye contact. It felt a little easier to breathe with the pro kneeling before him, and the child took a deep breath. Letting the night air cool his breathing, Izuku started to talk about his and Bakugo's rivalry. Their close friendship had always remained strong no matter what happened, and that assurance was what gave them both confidence. It didn't matter if one of them went further, because at the end of the day, their rivalry would catch them up to surpass the other, continuing their cycle of competition. But... Izuku chose his words carefully. He couldn't spill All Might's secret after all. Kacchan's latest improvement. It's so far ahead that it feels like I can't keep up. His quirk was more suited for being a hero in the first place, since I can't really help with offense. The most I can do is incapacitate a person, but that's only if the circumstances are right. I managed to close our gap since I can move more freely than Kacchan, and even more since I started redirecting attacks. I even have a stronger punch now, but apart from the punch, Izuku didn't have the means to attack. His quirk, as far as he knew, was simply gravity manipulation. It wasn't exactly helpful when he couldn't increase as much as decrease. It had been a secret up until that point, but the greenette always wished he could increase more. He thought he would have so much more potential. He knew he couldn't, of course, and in the end compromised by constantly finding ways to utilize decreasing gravity. It was to the point that fainting was just a regular occurrence. I don't know. It was silly anyway. I shouldn't be worrying about this. I already run forward with all my strength. I don't need to do anything different, right? I'll catch up. He wasn't able to deny his thoughts anymore as the boy stood there, tears welling in his eyes. But how am I expected to go further than what I've been doing? I'm already trying my hardest, but it's not enough. How am I supposed to compete? I know I said that I'll keep going, but I don't want to aim for second. I know it sounds like pride at this point, but I just want to keep going for first, as I've always done. But it seems hopeless. My hard work just isn't good enough. My best just isn't good enough. It's almost as if someone is saying that I'm just not good enough. Unable to keep his emotions in check, the greenette had unwillingly doubled over as he cried over his problems. His lungs felt sore from the crying and his chest heaved from the pain. His legs were weak and his body shook with emotion. He had never known the feeling of spilling everything out, and now that he did, Izuku felt empty. He didn't know what to do, and he watched the floor when the child felt a hand on his head. Best Jeanist's hands slowly ran through the curly green locks that had become messy with the frustration, and they made eye contact. The boy hadn't even realized he broke it in the middle of his crying. You saw on your first day here that the bond between my agency and I is represented through some sort of physical trait. We don't have all the time in the world, after all. The peace needs to be kept. He pulled the child into a hug and continued to run his hand through the mass of hair, finally managing to tame the mop. But your bond with Bakugo won't be broken by something as simple as one moving ahead. That's what internships are for, right? It's my job to show you how to stitch your mark into the fabric of society. Izuku smiled and nodded again, his tears warm on his freckled face. In a way, it was perfect how you came here. Best Jeanist pulled back to wipe the greenette's face. My quirk is something you wouldn't expect a hero to succeed with, would you? It was true. Fiber Master allowed the pro to manipulate every single fiber in existence telekinetically, but it wasn't a quirk for either offense or defense. Yet I can use my quirk's potential for both, since I didn't give up. Society might think that flashy offensive powers are the makings of a hero, and although it's true to some extent, it's partly false, too. Izuku felt the cooling vest he wore forcefully straighten his back. The pro lifted his hands to show him what was going on, and the boy found himself standing in a proud stance. Quirks that aren't flashy would be the more versatile ones, like ours. We become strong by finding creative ways to apply ourselves. Now stand tall and look your best. You are an intern at the Genius office, both on paper and in appearance. The pro pulled out a hand mirror, and Izuku couldn't help but smile as he saw his hair finally tamed. It was physical proof that he worked with the pro hero and was part of his team. I don't suit the look at all. A genuine smile crept onto Izuku's face as he chuckled to himself. Jeanist let out a little proud huff as he finally managed to get the look he wanted, although it was unclear whether he wanted the smile or the tamed hair. Probably both. You know what? The voice Izuku had was no longer vulnerable. In fact, his tone had completely changed, and was now the same prideful one he held from the festival. You're right. At this point, I think it's better for me to just stick with what I have. I've gotten so many ideas on my quirk and how to improve my costume for the sports festival that I bet, if I worked just as hard as I already do, I'd leave Kutch out of the dust. Yeah, I don't even have to worry about One for All. Kutch isn't all might. He's strong, but I'll be even stronger. His newfound energy was stronger than before, and the pro hero nodded. I have done my job. They started heading back to the agency, where everyone was a little worried for them. They had been out late after all, and who knew when the hero killer would next strike? Izuku open-heartedly laughed and reassured them that he wouldn't go down so easily, returning the atmosphere of the office to its original cheery self. The next day would be the boys' last day, but it had been an enlightening week. The pros were more than happy to return the enthusiastic energy Izuku brought in the next morning. Many had actually come in to see the boy off since he had been so helpful throughout their schedules. Many wanted him to join in the future, and the freckled child laughed and nodded, promising to visit. But I want to open my own agency too. You're much too young for that. Jeanist smiled as the boy packed up his things, getting ready to catch the last train home. But until then, you are more than welcome here, anytime. The pros all waved Izuku off as he thanked them, bowing as he left. The child didn't know how, but after that internship, he felt like he was walking on air, even if he hadn't used his quirk at all. Thank you all for sticking around, and I hope that you enjoyed. Before you leave, we would just like to let you know that We the Celestials has many other channels for your entertainment and viewing purposes. All the information you'll need is right below here in the description, so feel free to check out all the other incredible projects our team creates. Secondly, on behalf of We the Celestials, I'd like to thank everyone involved in the production of today's awesome content. Their details will be in the description below. That's all for today's video, so goodbye and have a divine day.